Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Snap Count. I'm Emilio Calderon, and I am joined by a man who is rumored to have been funding Francis Ford Coppola's next movie. His name is Caleb Catlin.
That's true.
It's true. We are just going to jump right into it because we've got a fun episode today. We've been recapping all the games so far every week, but this week we are going to take a step back. We're going to reflect on the season so far. We are going to be grading all 32 teams in the NFL based on their performance so far. We don't have a strict criteria for this. Anything goes, really. We're taking anything into account. Expectations before the season, for sure. But performance so far, performance by players, performance by coaching staff, also taking into account maybe in addition to those preseason expectations, how the teams have been constructed. And obviously that'll affect performance, but also what we think could have been different about that as well. But I think it'll be a fun one. We're going to go in alphabetical order, all 32 NFL teams. Caleb, are you ready?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so again, starting in alphabetical order, that leaves us with the Arizona Cardinals, who are a very respectable, I'd say, 2-3 so far. I'll let you start because...
hold on. Your alphabetical is a little different. I went by alphabetical is the
team you went
names.
by teams.
I had Bears, Bengals, etc. So this will be fun. Again, I'm still... I guess.
This would be real fun then. All right. Yeah. Sorry, I went by alphabetical by city/state. Yeah. So we're gonna go with it. Yeah, we're gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals, who again have started the season at 2-3. I'll let you start because these are one of your teams.
I gave them a B mostly from the flash of potential more than anything. The defense I think is still very bipolar. Real raw set of guys alongside Budda Baker. But Kyler Murray looks fantastic out there. He's a true triple threat in a league that mostly acts within dual threats.
Yeah, I gave them a B too, mostly for the same reasons. I did put, I hadn't thought about it yet so far this season. He's been in the league for a few years now. He's coming off an ACL tear, and I remember that Kyler Murray's 27. So this is, the physical peak of his career. But again, for a guy of his talent or the way he is used, not just both the way he wants to play and the way he's used, coming off an ACL tear, it's a big concern. But I think this is as good as they could have asked for from both him and him of this organization so far too. I think they've handled this really well. Drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., they drafted Paris Johnson last year. I think last year they also drafted Trey McBride, who's been really great at tight end. This offense looks really good projecting forward. And you mentioned the defense hasn't been very great, which was the number one concern going into the season. They are at least not a bottom 5 defense for what it's worth. Because last year they were arguably the worst defense in the league, so that is an improvement.
It's still as punchy as sort of last year, where at their last year they were definitely bottom 5, but at least they were punchy. At least this go around, I think they're a little bit more consistent on the punchiness. They might get swatted by the Lions, but they'll make an effort against the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, just for this week especially, we saw that the defense is at least scrappy and talented enough to keep them in games like that, whereas last year they would have had to win by stomping other teams offensively. But again, this is why it makes a big difference to go from 32nd in EPA per play to 26th, which is what they are this year. It's a really big jump given the talent gap they had.
Yeah,
the Arizona Cardinals. Wow, look at that. Great start. We agreed on that one. I'm not sure how we're going to feel about this one. This one's kind of funky given the expectation, and it's a very strange team that's constructed. The Atlanta Falcons are up next. They are 3-2. They're tied. Actually, I think they might technically be second. Or no, they are first in the AFC, in the NFC South, because they actually just beat the Tampa Bay Bucks. But yes, like I said, this is a weird one. I gave them a C, just because there's a lot of good and a lot of bad, and it's. My big concern was Kirk Cousins, but he's actually been fine. It's been a roller coaster. He's had one really great game this past Thursday Night Football, and the rest of it has been fine. The Achilles injury is clearly affecting him a lot, how he plants and how he pushes off the back foot. He's not the same quarterback, but the Falcons line has been really good so far this year too. Defense has been better, adding Justin Simmons and Matt Judon, but clearly not enough. Yeah, this is a weird team. I still have high-ish expectations for this team, but I'm still not quite sure where they are floor or ceiling. Yeah, how did you feel about them?
I'd had them at a C as well. Sort of just bang in the middle, mixed with like the jolt of energy that Kirk Cousins was giving to
Mm-hmm.
that Falcons offense that was just abysmal to watch last year. So I think that says a lot, just in general for how they go onto that field. Whereas last year they looked really fucking dejected. But yeah, I mean, they still kind of register as a little incomplete. Like it doesn't seem like we're looking at the final iteration. It feels like step one in a longer process for them.
See, that's also why I gave them a C because I think the groundwork or foundation, however you want to call it, is clearly there. I think their young guys, Drake London and Darnell Mooney, has been a really good addition. And then Bijan Robinson and Tyler Argio. I think it's very abstract, but I think they all need to be better. And I'm not sure if it's a scheme or talent thing. Like, are we overrating them a little, maybe, or maybe, yeah, it's just taking time. Again, it's only been 5 games for this weird team that is a very old quarterback and a very young skill group.
Yeah.
But then also, in a wider picture, drafting Michael Penix Jr., who, again, to be clear, I really love. I thought he could walk into a team like this and play right away. It's just kind of weird now. You have this young, promising guy at quarterback who he really could just play right now, and then you see how bad the defense is still, like generally speaking. And we're talking about a 9th overall pick. Like, feels strange for a team that's this close to not be using talent like that, whether it's actually Penix or somebody they could have drafted on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to your point on the run game, and I do think this can sort of speak to people like Pitts and whatnot as well. I mean, for someone like Bijan, this is his second coach in 2 years. So, I mean, I think we're seeing just a strange alteration where we don't really know their identity because they haven't had the opportunity to really get one.
Yeah,
Like
that's very fair.
how Arthur Smith was using Bijan is way differently than how I forget the name of their coordinator, but it's different from how Raheem Morris and his coaching staff is using Bijan Robinson. So I think it's really just a matter of figuring out like where they fit in and like how they want to operate with those guys because it's all still new for a really raw bunch.
Yeah, Falcons, really weird team, but I'm glad they're overcoming my initial skepticism because and after week 1 I was really skeptical of this team, but at the very least it's clear they're talented enough to be competitive.
Yeah.
All right, moving down the list, we've got the Baltimore Ravens, who are at 3-2. I'd like to start first because I had not one line. I had a few things written down for them. I gave them a D plus.
Oh shit!
The first line I wrote down is, "I hate these guys. Just be good." like I'm not trying to be rude here. Sincerely, like, please just be good. Stats, mostly just team stuff I had written down. Offense is still really great for as much complaining as we, or especially I, have done with this team the early part of the season. They're 3rd in points per game. They're 1st in yards per game. They're 2nd in EPA per play, and the eye test is backing it up. I'll let the offensive part of this team slide because the defense has been a huge problem.
Yeah.
Last year under Mike McDonald, they were 1st in points per game, 6th in yards per game, 2nd in EPA per play. This year, 26th in points per game, 20th in yards, and 21st in EPA per play. And let me just tell you, if you don't believe in any of those things, especially EPA per play, the eye test is backing this up. This defense is real porous, man. It is real porous. They're clearly reeling from the loss of Mike McDonald, who's setting up a fairly respectable defense in Seattle. Patrick Queen too, but I think that's kind of just symptoms of a larger problem. And truthfully, I'm not really sure what the larger problem is, but I will say that the secondary has looked really weak, especially post McDonald and Queen.
Yeah, which is strange, right? Because I don't know, they drafted Nate Wiggins. I liked who they.
I think Wiggins has been good. Yeah, I think he's been fine. Yeah,
it's just, again, it's I mean, this was an issue that I had even with McDonald. I think that defense just suffers from a general lack of sound like a fucking military stooge or whatever, but like they suffer from like a lack of discipline. They bite on plays real fucking bad, and it always blows up in their face. And it's honestly how Kansas City has made a living off of completely demolishing them in the postseason. It's a lot of boom or bust, which, I mean, I appreciate that over some other teams later on in this who lack any
Yeah.
type of explosion. But I don't know. It's really glaring now that they don't have somebody like McDonald to rep for that sort of thing. I gave them a B minus. I think a lot of this just comes from that rushing game. I don't feel great about anything that they're doing on either side of the ball. But clearly, I mean, it's making a difference. They finally, lit a fire under their asses after beating the Cowboys. But like the Cowboys are the Cowboys, it's like, I don't know how serious am I supposed to take that. But Lamar's still being good. He still has the same bit of issues that I still don't love from him. Obviously, real squirrely, especially coming off of last season where he really made it a point to show how great he was when he remained in the pocket like that, especially in games against great teams like the Lions. And now I'm seeing him go back to like this tried and true, like, I'm going to run the ball because I don't see it play immediately type of thing that gets on my fucking nerves. But, I mean, Derrick Henry is, still beating Father Time, which
He's
I think
beating
is
Father Time.
it's really fucking impressive. And I think now that he's being fully implemented into that offense, I do think that allows for them to get really comfortable and for them to, to even stay in these games with like the Bengals this week.
Yeah, like understand that my grade might be a little harsh, but it is solely based on the expectation that this was arguably the best team in football last year, even, and came to the expectation that they could be that again this year. And yeah, it's just been really disappointing, and just, especially on the defensive side of the ball, did not expect them to be that poor. Like you thought they'd, when you talk about defenses, especially because I feel like defenses regress a lot easier than offenses.
Yeah,
they can be this bad,
I kind of accounted for them to flop a little bit, to be honest.
Right, fair enough.
This is mostly a reflection of what I expected from them. Really, I just didn't expect it to be that bad on a defensive front.
Okay.
Like for them being like an A+ last season, I kind of expected them to be in the B territory.
Yeah, being number one, you expect some.
So the fact that they dropped down to like a B- is really just indicative of how floppy their defense has been.
All right. I feel like people then might hate this next grade that I give out. We are going to be talking about the Buffalo Bills, who are also at 3-2. This is a funny one because you weren't high on them before this season. What did you give them?
I gave them an A+.
Oh wow!
I gave them an A+. It really the grade really pops when I look at the box score and I try and like sift through the names and I just look in confusement and bewilderment because I genuinely have no clue who most of these people are. And
like he's not kidding, by the way.
maybe that's just bad for me as a football fan, but I genuinely have very little idea who the fuck most of these people are. Outside of Josh Allen, but he's making this shit work. Keon Coleman looks great as his number one option, which was a big worry of mine heading into the season, whether a first year guy would immediately pop like that. But when you got Josh Allen getting you the ball, I mean, who's to say, really? I'm still not really sure what the long-term vision of their team looks like, but that's not really what we're grading here. The fact that they're making this work with, very obvious like lack of big name talent.
Yeah,
it says a lot to what they're doing as a whole team.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, which is valid. Like even for people like us who watch a lot of football, like you said, even half jokingly, like you didn't know who half the guys on this offense were, which I think for a lot of people is probably true. But I'd say based on the narrative around the Bills, who I think suffer from just having to play against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's real like second place syndrome, and so
Yeah.
you forget like how good Josh Allen or really this team can be. Yeah, when they let go of so many older core guys last season, name like the two biggest ones being Jordan Poyer and Stephon Diggs. For I think it's valid whether you consider yourself casual or not to look at that and go like, oh, so I guess they're kind of in a rebuild or transition. So yeah, they turned over a lot of core guys, but yeah, early returns have been good. I think the big thing from this season is I gave them a B plus, by the way. Yeah, I also gave them a B plus. Granted, I was higher on them than you were for the season, but still, I think even then, I think yeah, they have shown a lot so far. Like the number one thing I think this team has shown is that they can be very competitive even when Josh Allen isn't at his best. This past Week 5 game against the Texans, I think was a great example. I think he went like 9 for 30, something
20.
insane like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
9
nine for
for
20.
30.
But the play calling has been a lot better under Joe Brady, and the defense continues to be solid. Yeah, they've been with. I was not paying enough attention. I think Matt Milano should still be out with
Yes.
an injury. I forget. But yeah, they're. I wrote down their stats because they've got really funny team stats. They're 21st in defensive yards per game, but they are 12th in points and then 11th in EPA per play, and they're also 9th in total pressures, which is really interesting because they have nobody in the top 10, so it means they're getting it from every facet of the defense. And then offense too, really weird. They are 22nd in yards per game. They're 4th in points. They're 6th in EPA per play, but they're 27th in average time of possession so far this season, like per game. So yeah, really weird team. Yeah, I think Sean McDermott and Joe Brady have done a really great job with this team. And to your point, I think Keon Coleman has been a really good number one. I think for this to turn into an A is just if he could take a next step. Like, I don't think it is necessary per se. If he could, then I think that would really make this team, oh yeah, like this is undoubtedly one of the best teams in the league. Like, I think they already are, but that would kind of be a separator between them and I don't know who people consider the top 6 teams in the league, but you know what I mean. Like,
I mean,
real,
we'll get to that.
We're gonna
get to that
yeah,
later. I think there's a pretty obvious team that I think sets the bar for the rest of the league.
All right, moving on. We've got the Carolina Panthers at 1-4. I gave them a C. Which is kind of funny. Like, I thought I would just straight up give them like they would for sure be in the D or F.
That's nice. That's really nice of you, to be honest.
Okay, fine. Let me explain that. But the first thing I wrote down was, "Yeah, whatever, dude." But when I really thought about it, I will be honest. Part of this grade, or maybe most of this grade, is giving Dave Canales benefit of the doubt because the narrative is he was hired to fix Bryce Young, and after 2 games, it was very clear Bryce Young was not getting better. He actually actively got worse.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm giving him and this team / this grade benefit of the doubt because it's not his fault. That's still an organizational thing. Like benching Young now could still yield better results for his development. But honestly, I think that is an aside because speaking for this year and not just Bryce Young, they've looked really good, like really good since they bench Bryce Young. Like Dalton has shown this offense can actually be fairly like an above average NFL offense. The interior O-line, which was the narrative was they brought these guys in to hire their shorter quarterback. They are actually, Robert Hunt, they're actually quite good. And Chuba Hubbard has been really great the 3 games since Bryce Young was benched. This team is really weird, but offense has been really good. So
I gave them, to your point when you were talking about Canales finally benching Bryce Young. I gave them a D minus, a part grade.
I understand. That's fine.
A part grade above that, just because he had the courage to finally point a point and be like, "We're not doing this shit." That was the only reason they didn't get F, is because they were like, "All right, like we can't do this shit anymore. Like, just give Andy Dalton the ball." And I mean, this is what I've noticed. I've been taking little mental notes throughout all the games. What I'm noting, we talked, I think it was last week, about how teams are, putting the safeties back for these super deep ball situations.
Yeah.
Where a lot of quarterbacks this year particularly are thriving because they have the capability to stay within the pocket and take those little 10-yard
Mm-hmm.
throws.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Dalton is a perfect reflection of that. It's not really how much is he being dynamic, more so than how is he forcing teams to drop their safeties so that they could take advantage when they
Mm-hmm.
do drop the safeties. And that's really the least that you could ask from him. I don't know how much that's like great play calling, more so than just an honest reaction to how a lot of defenses are scheming
Mm-hmm.
against modern NFL offenses.
I think people, as a broader point, when you look at Andy Dalton and Joe Flacco, they think, wow, they're still like some of the better quarterbacks in the league, which I'm not going to necessarily deny. I don't think they are, but I'm not necessarily going to deny, but it is definitely clearly more reflective of, again, yeah, where offenses and defenses now they're being called to NFL in 2024 are, because we're talking about two old guys who are literally just doing the fundamentals, and
Yeah,
that is the reason they have jobs. Like, I'm not trying to be reductive. I do think they've both been good, really, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like, yeah, why is it we can't get more young quarterbacks to just do these things?
well, I mean, because college sort of teaches that,
I
because
will
of
say, yeah,
that, because of
this
that
is a
shift.
can of worms. This is a can
Yeah,
of worms because.
because that shift in NFL offenses, it eventually spills over to college. Then
Mhm.
eventually the defenses are like, listen, we can't keep getting our shit cooked all game. So just very very slowly, these defenses are starting to realize, like, all right, they can't fucking beat us. If we just pull our safeties back a little bit. I mean, you can blame Mike McDaniel for that. Whenever we get to Miami.
Oh man, I got something to say about them later on. But staying in order, we got the Chicago Bears, who are at 3-2. But I feel like I'm not harsh, but I'm just gonna say I gave them a C minus.
Okay.
Yeah, I think ironically, much like the Falcons, this year they went with sexy upside versus being fundamentally sound, and that clearly hasn't worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who listens to us, you've heard me complain about the Chicago Bears, which is still unclear whether this is a scheme thing, like is Shane Waldron not the right guy to figure this out, or on the offensive line maybe just really is as big of a are bigger than of a problem than we thought. Um, I get, again, giving there's some benefit of the doubt because this is ultimately still a rookie quarterback, regardless of the pedigree of him or this offensive skill group. Um, at the very least, yeah, they don't look very bad. There's just a lot of things that are clear issues, namely the O line. I think that's really it because their defense has been really stellar.
Yeah, I mean, that's the defense is the reason why I gave them a C plus
Why they're
instead.
yeah, that's fair.
Because they were going blow for blow with one of the premier offenses in the league in Houston. Their defense was
Mm-hmm.
still able to go blow for blow with that. So I think that says a lot. Really, it's just a matter of figuring out, is this primarily offensive line issue, which I think it is, and then B, once you address that, how do you factor in guys outside of strange DeAndre Swift games that aren't like that shouldn't be your bread and butter anyway.
Yeah, it was funny. Week there was like a 2 week period this season so far. It's only been 5 weeks, but I think this may have been as recent as last week, but at some point, people again, you should take things like this specifically with a grain of salt because, as you know, people on Twitter and Instagram don't watch sports, and you should never take their opinion seriously. But there was a week where people were like, "Is DeAndre Swift actually bad?" Which is valid because I think he's been moderately overrated since
Yeah.
ever since he left Detroit. But the very next week, I think was the Colts game. I think I showed you this. There's that photo of the Bears offensive line in which 4 of the 5 linemen are on the floor on the Colts. D-line is already in the backfield. It's like, yeah, that's what Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift have had to work with, man.
Yeah, it's fucking brutal, and like at this rate, it's just making guys like Roma Dunze just look like cardio guys at this rate.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Still in the seas, we've got another funny one. The Cincinnati Bengals are at 1-4. I know you love these guys. You love these guys with all your heart. What did you give them?
I gave them a C minus because they're not bad enough to be a D, but they're definitely not good enough to be in the Bs. I mean, all I put is the vibes are at an all-time low. Burrow still looks like Burrow. Like, everything looks relatively fine. I mean, their defense is fucking awful. I think we can say that pretty concretely at this rate. But, like, the fuck is Zach Taylor doing, man? Genuinely, what is he calling out there? I mean, it feels genuinely insane to I don't I don't even like have the words for it. The vibes are just so bad, and it's not a fault of Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase or T Higgins. Really, it's just like
Yeah.
I don't understand the play calling. The offensive line is hit or miss, to put it nicely, and the defense is flaky, to put it nicely.
I gave them a C minus / D plus because I like can't tell. I wrote for them the exact same thing I wrote for the Ravens, except I wrote I hate these guys too. Just be good. like yeah, sincerely.
It shouldn't be this fucking hard.
It shouldn't
really
be this hard.
shouldn't.
Yeah, that's the best way to. It shouldn't be this hard.
Especially when, like, again, I don't know. Joe Burrow is a top 5 to 10 quarterback. Like,
I did put as one of my bullet points, which I don't have a lot for them. I put Joe Burrow. I'm sorry I disrespected you. M dash. Your team sucks.
He's
Your team sucks.
So hard. But there was a real stupid play this last Sunday, though, towards the end of that game that allowed for Baltimore to take that shit to overtime, where he tried to force something to Jamar Chase and he got picked off immediately. All he had to do was manage the clock, and that fucker threw a pick immediately. And I was just like, these guys do not give a shit whether or not they win or lose. It feels impossible watching them.
We're just going to move on because the vibes are somewhat similar, though definitely significantly worse with this team. Same division, the Cleveland Browns, who are also at 1-4. I gave them a D, and then the first bullet point I have is fire this franchise onto the moon. Like, I don't know. I feel like I've tried to be nice, and I've put asterisks like every time I've criticized them because I've criticized them almost every week. Mm-hmm. Offense does have several injuries, but I don't know. Deshaun Watson is cooked. Don't even bother rushing Nick Chubb's recovery, man. It's not worth it at this point.
So I'd also gave them a D, and the only note that I put, at least at the time when writing it, was that they're the same as the Bears, but Deshaun Watson is the worst quarterback in the league. It's literally the same thing. Browns defense is fantastic, and it's the only reason they don't get a fucking F.
Yeah, really.
But I was looking at this clip where Tom Brady was talking about when he was talking to Bill O'Brien, who obviously used to coach the Texans, and apparently he just implemented the Clemson offense so that Deshaun Watson didn't have to work very hard to like transfer offense. He legit like took it beat for beat, just took the Clemson offense and installed it within Houston so that Deshaun Watson didn't really have much to learn, which speaks insane volumes. So I proceed to read the comments to that sort of situation, and they're like, man, the Browns should do the same thing. I'm like, no, no. Like, I don't know. It shouldn't be difficult for somebody
That's like failing upwards on Bill O'Brien's part. Like, that's both smart and that's, you know what that is? That's like the memes that people have been making about like, oh no, this next generation of doctors graduating on Zoom in 2020. That's what that is. They're like, yeah, you made it through 2020. What about when you have to be a doctor in 2021? And that was Bill O'Brien with the offense. ChatGPT, please give me an offense for a guy who likes to operate out of the shotgun.
That says a lot because I had to watch Bill O'Brien run that offense at Alabama for so fucking long. But yeah, that says a lot. So when he eventually gets shifted over to Kevin Stefanski, my whole thing is, why does Kevin Stefanski
think is a good coach? And once this is done, will clearly show he's a good coach, but
You know who didn't fucking struggle under Kevin Stefanski? Joe Flacco, and he's almost 60 years old. Like,
he's
this
got
isn't
Social
it.
Security coming, man. You don't
Like,
even
I
need the
know,
NFL salary. He's got Social Security.
like I'm saying, like Deshaun Watson, yeah, like sure, he's cooked. His shoulder is probably, done for at this rate. But it's not unworkable when you can install Joe Flacco on a whim and the offense works.
I think the
Like
best way
the
I would like
Cleveland
to
the
move
Cleveland
on,
Browns don't they don't even gotta
but
be like they don't even have to be like upper tiered offense in the league. They were fine being mid tier with Joe Flacco, and they still made it to the playoffs. So I don't get it on a fundamental level.
the best way I'll put this is there's a difference between being bad and then the subtext is there's still something here though when you look at Chicago Bears Justin Fields or someone who I think is not to give some spoilers, but a quarterback who I think is bad, but still theoretically even objective as upside, like Will Levis. Yeah, those are bad. That's bad quarterback play. And then there's bad quarterback play like this, which is like, no, this is bad.
And,
Like I see this, I see Jacoby Brissett in New England. Like, yeah, this is bad.
what's even worse is that he's complaining, expecting them to cater to his needs, and I'm just like, at some point, like this needs to be kind of even. Deshaun Watson's not even trying. And the players certainly don't give a shit. They don't dap him up when they get off the field.
I don't know how much better the vibes are going to get. I'll at least be a little less mean with this one. We're moving on to the letter D, which is for the Dallas Cowboys. They are at 3-2, but I'd like to start because I don't have a lot. I gave them a C minus.
Yep.
And my first bullet is they are potentially the most whatever team of this season.
Yeah.
The numbers kind of back it up too. They're second in offensive passing yards per game. Dak Prescott has been really good. I think he's been as good as any human being reasonably could be, given how bad the rest of this team is. Which is like they're not bad, but again, second in offensive passing yards per game. You want to know what they are ranked for running offense? 31st, man, 31st. And it's
30 second has to be the Patriots, right?
I actually don't know off the top of my head. I didn't write it down.
Ramondre Stevenson and all.
The defensive passing yards per game allowed, they're 11th. Rushing, 24th. Like, yeah. Oh, and they're also that actually also is reflecting their average time of possession on offense, which is they're ranked 28th. Actually, yeah. Running the ball, and defending the run is absolutely killing this team. Actually, it's so bad. I feel comfortable just saying that it's so bad that it's borderline officially killed their chances of being competitive in the playoff picture. I think they could still sneak into the playoff, but I think the floor or ceiling, whichever one, is very clear, and it's just not good enough at all.
Yeah, I also gave them a C minus. It's really strange because I think I was looking at some number. I think they were like number 6 in yards allowed last season. Which, again, it's really weird that they got all this talent, and then under Mike Zimmer, they just sort of deflate like that.
We've talked about this, though, yeah. I think it's clear now, with hindsight, that what Dan Quinn did is he papered over cracks in his defense by getting big impact splash plays.
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer's bag is, no, let's run a fundamentally sound offense or defense. And
yeah,
clear. It feels weird to say that, but I wouldn't say it's clear with these guys you can, but it's more so that you're not getting the most out of these guys if you're not getting those splash plays.
Yeah,
which is they're the most similar. They're the most similar thing we have to an NFL offense, but as a defense, they need these splash plays to live, and they're not getting them, whether it's through the pass rush or in the secondary.
Yeah. I will just briefly add to your point. I was going out to get breakfast earlier, and of course I'm wearing the Ed Reed jersey, so somebody was making a point about the Ravens game. And I was sitting there, and he was just like, because he's a Cowboys fan, he was like, man, why the fuck didn't Jerry Jones get Derrick Henry? And then proceeds to go on like this long rant. He was like, I mean, Derrick Henry's from Dallas. He was like, and our run game looks this awful. And he's like, Jerry Jones is being cheap. And all I could say is like, yeah, Like
Yeah,
there's no disputing it, because I mean he kind of like he fits the environment. If, from Dallas, they really needed a fucking running back. He'd honestly be kind of perfect, especially for the kind of run game that they like to run anyway. But
yeah,
you know, this is the way that the Cowboys laid their bed. So
yeah. It's going how we expected. A little worse, but essentially how we expected. Right, moving on. We got the Denver Broncos, who are surprising at 3-2. What? I know you love these guys as well. What did you give them?
I gave them a flat C.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
it's
I gave them a C.
it's Bo Nix, so like of course I'm gonna feel how I feel there. But their defense is looking kind of okay.
That was my. I wrote down the defense showed that the second half of last season was not a fluke, and they're actually for real. And I will put my hand up and say, I am sorry for not believing you.
Sean Sean
That's all I can say.
Payton Sean Payton's doing the damn thing for those boys on defense, man.
Yeah,
And I want to note particularly this week, Patrick Surtain fucking went crazy on
Patrick Surtain,
Gardner
man.
Minshew. Two
Mm-hmm.
picks, two pass deflections. One of the picks was a pick six for 100 yards on maybe the worst throw I've ever seen in my fucking life. I mean, should have been a dead to chest laser throw, completely overthrows it, and Patrick Surtain legit looks up at it feels like I could see behind his fucking helmet, like he's squinting a little bit, like what, and then picks the shit off. It was awful. Maybe the most underrated corner, just off the fact that he's stuck in Denver and they don't win anything.
Yeah, they're not
Um,
competitive per se.
but he looks fantastic. That defense definitely gives a shit. They just kind of lack everywhere else.
This defense, second in points per game allowed, third in yards per game allowed. They are tied for first in EPA per play. And yeah, I tested backing it up because they are locking dudes down. Um, you'll enjoy this one, I guess. I was going to say, I'm sorry to be nitpicky, but obviously Chargers fan here, so I want to be a little bit of a bully. Broncos offense is 26th in EPA per play, which I'm nitpicking because the teams below them are quite bad. The Panthers, the Patriots, the
Oh,
Raiders,
oh
the
god.
Browns, the
Ugh.
Dolphins, and the
Ugh.
Titans. You might notice those are all bad offenses. Dolphins
I
excluded
mean,
because of injury, obviously, but yeah, I'm just make what you will of that information.
Bo Nix, man, just like again, looked fine this week. That's about as nice as I could give him. He looked
Yeah.
fine, but like I don't know, it's the Raiders.
What it feels like the
I
ceiling is. That kind of feels like what he is as a quarterback. He's fine.
Yeah, kind of below Ryan Fitzpatrick on the pecking order, but not like Trubisky level.
Oh man, it's gonna be a big day when Bo Nix becomes the 39th ranked quarterback in the NFL according to Caleb. He's almost out of the 40s, man. He's almost there.
He's almost there.
Yeah, to a team that we're not going to bully because this team's actually been quite good so far this season. The Detroit Lions are sitting at 3-1. I gave them an A. It's I'm like A. Okay, I'll give them. I'm changing it right here. A/A minus, mostly because of
Yeah.
expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, offense continues to be dominant. 7th points per game, third in yards per game, fourth in EPA per play. Eye test is backing it up. They're doing it ground and air. Goff was a little shaky to start the season, but he settled. He was really great in that Seahawks game.
Mm-hmm.
And then this rush attack with David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, like I don't know what to say, man. It's
Yeah. I
seeing
gave
seeing is believing, man.
yeah, I gave them A minus. I mean, really, it's just consistency.
Mm-hmm.
They could have very easily, felt like a real down point after getting thwarted out the playoffs the way that they did against the 49ers, but they don't appear very shaken by that outside of some really weird Jared Goff and Ben Johnson decisions. But
Yeah,
like,
that Tampa Bay loss was really strange in hindsight, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that those are like not good losses, but a loss where you reflect on what you did poorly. So
yeah,
I trust this team enough to get past
I,
that.
I just find it ironic that they are where they are, considering how deep this division is, and the one time that they're favored
They're
this
supposed to be
season,
the
yeah,
so
now they're like, oh, maybe they're third. Like that feels awful.
one more stat I did want to share is on the defensive side of the ball. Big storyline for them was improvements to the secondary, which I think are real. But this is just a funny stat that I happen to pick up on. Last year they were 27th in passing yards per game allowed. They're still 27th, but last year EPA per play on passing plays 28th. This year 16th. So I'm not sure what that accounts for. I thought that was funny because me with I like the stats to back up the eye test, but here it's like I think the eye test is prevailing where the stats aren't, because the secondary is definitely visibly significantly better, especially with the addition of Carlton Davis. I think Carlton Davis has been really great for this team, and the subtraction of CJ Gardner-Johnson.
What a bum.
Sorry, I was trying to be nice. I didn't mean for there to be a pause. It would have been less awkward if I had not paused.
You tried, but you can't not say that about Patrick Beverley.
Today, staying in the division, another team with high expectations. We got the Green Bay Packers, who are 3-2. They've had a really weird season so far, but what did you give them?
I gave them an A+. I think they're the best team in the league. Not only they didn't just survive those games with Malik Willis. They put hands and feet on the goddamn teams when they had Malik Willis under center. And I feel like that says a lot about their ceiling and even their floor, really. Because, again, if you could do that with Malik Willis, who was so bad that Tennessee, I think they opted for a third, string quarterback when he was in Tennessee because of how bad he was. The fact that that Matt LaFleur could scheme so well with someone so finicky under center, and then when you have such a strong defense the way that I think they probably have the best defense in the league. I mean, sky's the limit for them, really.
I gave them an A. I was definitely much higher on them than you were before the season, so makes my heart happy to hear you.
Well, they've
had a weird season for sure. What was that?
I had them 5. I just didn't I had to see it mostly. Because again, they came off of it was a surprising season for them last year, I'd say. People weren't sure that they were going to be one of the big heavy hitters in their division. So I think really I just had to see it. And I mean, they could have very easily just been really rock solid again, sort of like the Seahawks, who we'll get to later, where it's they're good, but they're not NFC Championship good. And I think they're NFC Championship good, at least.
But yeah, I think we mostly agree. Jordan Love has been a little bit shaky, but he's one of those guys I will also give the benefit of the doubt to, because the upside there is just so clear. And like you've mentioned, Matt LaFleur's coaching, I think he's been, if not for coincidentally Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings, I think Matt LaFleur would clearly be the coach of the year front runner right now. And then on the defensive side of the ball, defense has been great. And Xavier McKinney, my beautiful boy, I think I read he's the first player since 1970, something like that, to record 5 interceptions in his first 5 games with the team. Yeah, and I don't. To your point, I don't think either this offense or defense is done growing, which is really exciting or scary if you're a fan of an opposing team.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost getting halfway through. Moving on to H, we've got one team in this bracket. That's Houston Texans. They are 4-1. Surprisingly, I don't have a lot to say about this team, mostly because we probably talk about them more than the average person. I give them an A-.
Yeah.
We have high expectations. We both have high expectations for this team. Or before I keep going, what did you give them?
I gave them a flat A, but an A- is also doable. I mean, same reasons we were talking about the last couple of weeks. I mean, kind of struggle against really great defenses, strange Bobby Slowick tendencies, but their defense looks fantastic, and they can be as great as they want to be.
Yeah, defensive side of the ball. We've already shouted out Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson several times on this podcast. They have been stellar. Both of them, two of the best rushers in the league. Derek Stingley's been really great this year. Now that he's been healthy through 5 weeks. But yeah, just the offensive side of the ball is so strange. And I don't want to bag on Bobby Slowick too much. This should be a two sides of the same coin. Like, this is Bobby Slowick or the Texans GM, whose name I forget off the top of my head. The numbers look great. I mean, 6th in yards per game, a 9th in pass EPA per play, but they're 19th in points per game. And coincidentally, they're 30th in rushing EPA per play.
They faced some strong defenses though, which
they have so far. This
says a lot. Yeah. I think they definitely faced. They faced the Vikings and they faced another team that I'm spacing on right now, but those
so far they faced the Bears, the Vikings, and then the Bills. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I mean, 2 divisional games and a strong Bears defense. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. This if the Texans could figure out this run game, they'd be the best team in the league. I think. Yeah, that's all they need to do. Truthfully. Yeah, they were an easy one. All right, and then this is going to be the 16th team we're going to talk about. So we're halfway there. The Indianapolis Colts staying in division. They are 2-3. I don't have a lot for these guys. What grade did you give them?
I gave them a C plus. I put a caveat, a big asterisk. They're a B with Joe Flacco, and they're a C minus with Anthony Richardson. So I split it in the middle.
It's fair.
It's kind of crazy that they're like wild card potential with Joe Flacco instead of Anthony Richardson. It's really just that simple.
As last year, essentially. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like Joe Flacco's probably a little better than Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it should put them in the same spot. Get a couple real tough games against the Texans later on this year.
I didn't mean to be funny with them, but I wrote one thing. Are we sure Anthony Richardson doesn't have that Jameis Winston problem? Like, does he have an optometrist? Are we sure about this? Are we sure? Like, I don't know anymore. Might want his eyes checked. I don't know.
It's certainly possible. Or, like, maybe he has, like, a tick in his arm or something where, like, he can't help but do that.
Yeah. Colts fans, I'm sorry. That's really all I could think of. The rest of the team is great, though. I mean, yeah, it's the same team as last year, almost.
Yeah.
I will say, shout out to Liat.
Strong play caller.
Yeah, great play callers, as we know. Shane Steichen, especially, one of the best young head coaches in the league right now, I think. I meant to shout out Liatu Latu, shout out UCLA. But yeah, he's been really great. He's been one of the best young pass rushers in the league this year so far. I'm going to apologize in advance to this team because they are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are 1-4. I will be giving them an F.
I will be giving them a fat fucking F.
I have 2 bullet points for them. The first one is, fire this entire organization and stadium into the sun. My second bullet point is, there are 3 innocent people on this team. Their names are Brian Thomas Jr., Ezra Cleveland, and Josh Hines Allen. That's about it. Yeah.
This team fucking sucks. And I, like, for half a second, I thought, like, you know, they just beat the Colts. They just beat their division rivals. You know, maybe I could slide them up to a divine. No. They should be winning more games. Like, people had... It's not even just an expectation thing. I was lower on them than most people.
Yeah, you were. Mm-hmm.
But
even with lower expectations, you thought this would be like the 20th-ish ranked team in the NFL.
They're with, like, the Patriots and shit. And they have they have talent where they shouldn't be in that realm. I don't know where to even begin to place the blame, to be honest. I have no idea where the root cause starts. It could just be Doug Peterson, but I don't know if this is just a larger institutional thing, where, like, it starts as far back as the fucking owner in the GM. Like, I don't know where the issue is, but you shouldn't have someone that you're paying all that fucking money to under center, and he looks so floppy.
I really thought you were gonna make an AEW joke there. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No, so I did.
About it. You thought about it.
I did write down because I wrote it down in the event that they lost against the Colts. I was like, they should seriously consider just putting a wrestling ring in the middle of the football field and just run an event at this rate.
Moving on to a team with much higher expectations, though they've not necessarily met them. Feels funny saying that, but I think it's very valid. The back-to-back reigning champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, they sit at 4-0, but I'm gonna give them a C+. Yeah, they're 4-0, and but yeah, the vibes are quite strange. Right? Doesn't feel great. They're not bad yet, but yeah, the O-line has been kind of bad, and the skill group hasn't been great, even with injuries. But also, I'm just gonna put this here: like, is Patrick Mahomes okay? Like, is he okay? Because the past 2 years have us been going, yeah, he is the best quarterback we've ever seen.
Why does he do that?
But why? What's happening?
Like, why does he do the things that he does? I don't understand him.
Yeah, we just literally saw him do this last year, where he had a significantly worse team, and he was MVP level, and now he just looks fine, which is concerning if I'm a Kansas City fan.
So I feel like he does. My pops genuinely made this argument during the Super Bowl. He was like, just wait until the second half. He's just toying with them right now.
Yeah, I think that's also my thing. Yeah, do you think is he load managing himself?
I don't this legit does feel like a Steph Curry, LeBron James, like, I got 13 more games of this shit. Just get me to the playoffs. Like,
that's valid. Yeah,
I've seen him make the most genius throws I've ever seen, and then conversely, you'll watch a Week 4 game and he'll throw the worst piece of shit you've ever seen in your life.
He did have one of the worst throws I've seen this season in the Chargers win. Where you saw this in the first quarter after the Chargers scored on their opening drive. Yeah, he straight up overthrows his receiver by like 3-4 yards.
I paused Hulu and I was like, "What is your malfunction?" I don't get it. I feel like my pops is right. I think he's doing the show on purpose at this rate, because whenever he turns it on to win a football game, it's like a night and day difference. It's not even one of those things where it's like, oh, like this is always just a part of him. Like, no, it's such a drastic difference to where it's like it feels like this has to be on purpose.
Maybe Mahomes and LeBron are the same person. Except Mahomes is doing it before he even turns 30. He's just like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to do that.
Right. Like, I don't know. We saw this when LeBron first went to Cleveland, actually, which this is when LeBron is the best player in the galaxy. Like, there's no, even when they were given, MVPs to Curry and whatnot, they were like, yeah, but LeBron's still the best player in the world. That's kind of what this feels like, where it's like, yeah, Josh Allen might fuck around and win MVP, but like we know who's his daddy, basically.
I don't want it to be all Mahomes. I do want to point out Chris Jones and Trent McDuffie have still continued to look like star boys. Safeties have been concerning for them, but front seven for this team is good enough that I trust that defense. Staying in the division, coincidentally, I've got the Las Vegas Raiders, who are at 2-3. I have exactly one line for them, on my notes app. It's one line.
Yeah,
I did give them a C, but I put Antonio Pierce might be a vibes merchant. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
I gave them a D, but I also gave Pierce an out. I want to emphasize that he did go from being a linebackers coach to head coach just because his vibes were good. So we're watching him every week figure out how to coach a football. He didn't elevate to coordinator status where he's like, okay, I'm in charge of football. He was literally just in charge of the linebackers. So we're watching him go from a singular position to an entire football team in 1 year. So we're watching him figure out what he's doing in live time. So like one game he had really bad time management, and then I watched him in another close game, and I watched him do it a bit better the next time. So I'm watching him learn it in these live sequences where it's like, yeah, that was bad, but like, he's taking something away from
Mm-hmm.
these from what is ultimately a nightmare fucking situation. I mean, everything that's gone bad for the Raiders has gone bad. I mean, Gardner Minshew looks worse, which he's never been like great, but you wanted Colts Minshew out of him, and he's not Colts Minshew.
Yeah.
Um, Run game, they finally got Amir Abdullah to give them some sort of energy there, but that's rough. Devontae Adams once out, so Jacoby Myers is your wide receiver one. So I mean, I don't know. All you've got is Brock Myers. Is Brock out there? And again, defense. There's talent there, but it's not complete. So it's like, again, everything that could have went wrong is going wrong for him, and he has to figure it out on the fly. I feel like
Yeah.
if he just gradually went up to coordinator status, this could have been much
Been
easier for
avoided.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but instead he's just like, well, shit, I knew how to manage, what's his name on the linebacker side of things, but now I have to get,
To do it with
all
50 guys now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So now, like, I don't know. The players certainly seem to give a shit. At least Max Crosby does, because he still goes to bat for him at every turn. So again, I don't. There's definitely some issues with him, but it seems like he's figuring out what his identity is and what he wants out of this. You could definitely argue he's a vibes merchant guy because that's how he got his
No,
job.
but
But
it's not
like,
his fault per se. Yeah, yeah, like you're saying.
I'd
Yeah,
get,
like
I'd give it.
My C is more like, I think more like much more colder or rational takes. Like I'd understand if you gave this team a D even, but it's a
Yeah,
C where like they still have some juice all over this roster,
yeah,
and it really could be going much worse. Like true is like just my honest take. Like even a more experienced head coach could be handling this much poorer, as we see in like
Josh
Jacksonville
McDaniels. Or Josh McDaniels,
or Josh
literally the year
McDaniels.
before. Yeah,
Yeah.
who's had like 3 cracks at this already.
Like being 2-3 under Josh McDaniels is very different from being 2-3 under Antonio Pierce, which at the very least is credit I'll give to him. Like really.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. I think if this is, if we're still at a linear sort of rate come this time next year, then I'd be like, okay, like you gotta like demote yourself a little bit. But at this current junction, like I'm not. This is about, as bad as it can get, the way I see it. Barely eking out these wins, but he's learning. I see the progression.
Nice. Staying one more team in the AFC West, staying in the division. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers, who did have a bye this past week, so they are at 2-2.
Can can I
Yeah,
note
where would
just
you?
real can I note just real quickly, why did the NFL shift these bye weeks to so early in the season? It's genuinely baffling to me why they went from doing these bye weeks in like week 8, week 9, week 10, and now they're
Well,
doing
I
them
know
in like the first
with
third of
two
the year.
buys is a little funny, but I don't know how the scheduling for them works. But we have the international games. There are significantly more international games than there were before. And
Mhm.
then yeah, just funny because I forgot what team I was looking at. I swear I was looking at a team, and their first buy isn't until like week 9 or 10. Just like if you get two of them, why don't you get like one early, one second half or something?
Right. You think like, okay, if I'm going to do it in week 5, like, well, let's do one
Then
in
you're gonna get it in week 12 or
week
13. Yeah,
13 before the playoffs start. Like, I don't know. Or just again, do it the way you used to and just split it down the middle. I don't whatever. But the Chargers.
Yes. Speaking of a team that really needed bye week because they really did. Yeah, the Chargers again, who were sitting at 2-2. I was obviously biased here, but I gave them a B minus. It's mostly just in sincerity. I think regardless of how this, not totally regardless, but assuming it stays level, like even if the Chargers finish at maybe 6-11, even I think I've seen enough out of this regime early on to believe in the vision. The offense is worrying. It's not like sirens, but it's definitely like I'm keeping two eyes on this. But the physicality on there's been more physicality on offense, and the defense has looked really great.
Yeah,
not like granted weak competition the first 3 weeks of the season until they face the Chiefs, who they still mostly really strong against defensively. This defense on paper, like I already forgot what team you're. Oh, the Buffalo Bills offense. I'm sure if you looked at this Chargers defensive depth chart, you would go, "Who the hell are these guys?"
Yeah,
because outside of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, the latter of half of whom has gotten hurt, and Derwin James, they've got a lot of. They're getting a lot out of mid-level guys, really.
Yeah, I gave them a B for that reason. I think again, it just Greg Roman offense. You kind of understand why Lamar Jackson wanted to choke him out after like year 3.
I did have one question, which I'm not sure if this is just my eternal Chargers pessimist in me. Well, I guess it's two. Which is it's still early, but will Harbaugh and Greg Roman get more out of Justin Herbert? But the real pessimist question was, do the Chargers care more about Jim Harbaugh or Justin Herbert?
So I mean, listen, you called me crazy when I said
you suggested it, but
I suggested it. They could downgrade.
Yeah,
get more on the defensive side of the ball.
I don't think anything crazy will happen just because of the nature of this organization, but you never know. I'd keep my ears to the street for trade mill rumors going to the off season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I suggest before Sam Darnold, went the fuck off, I suggested that it would be who of them to inquire about Justin Herbert again.
Moving on, anyway. Moving on, but staying in the same city. This is a funny one, but I think it's pretty straightforward. We got the Los Angeles Rams, who unfortunately are sitting at 1-4. I'd like to go just because I think it's pretty straight for me. I am still giving them a C. Expectations for this team are very high. I think it's clear on paper this team is healthy. It can be one of the best teams in the league. They are so injured, it is insane.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even sure if I wanted to give them a B or a D. So, like, C is just like, I don't know. I got to split the. There's nothing else to give them.
I gave them a C+ because they're legit doing miracles.
They still look pretty good on offense, especially. Yeah.
Like, they kind of, like, they still, like, McVay was, you texted me that whole sequence between the Rams and the Packers, and I had to throw on the highlights, and I was just like, the fuck are they doing? But they still make it work. Shout out to Tutu Atwell.
Yeah, Matt Stafford is battling father time like Derrick Henry, but Tutu Atwell has been really great as their makeshift WR1. Speaking on the defense side of the ball, their defense has been great, but I think the D line is a good base to build with going into next season because the secondary really needs rebuilding, a la Detroit from last year. But they've got guys to work with. I do. That sequence is so funny. I can remember it so vividly. And we're talking. This will be the week 5 break from the season. So if you did not watch the Rams Packers game, there is legitimately 5-minute sequence. We're talking. I think it was in the 4th quarter, 5 whole minutes late in the game, where I'm trying to remember. So, Jordan Love is under pressure, so he throws what is supposed to be a check down, but he misses. He misses a screen, so it just rolls out of bounds because it's a backward pass. It's considered a fumble. And because it's a fumble, the clock is supposed to keep running. And I think Sean McVay points out to the refs, why isn't the clock running? And so then the refs have to get together and talk. And then the refs have to go to Matt LaFleur and ask, do you want to take a timeout? Like, why do I have to take a timeout? It's like, because the clock is supposed to be running. I'm like, but then there would be a 10-second runoff. And I think there's only like a minute left in the game. So it's a big deal, 10-second runoff our time.
So Jeff Teague made a similar situation about Chris Paul when he was facing the Clippers and Mike Woodson was their coach at the time, where it was some issue where like Mike Woodson was on the floor or something to that degree. And Chris Paul like snaps at the referee and be like, he's not supposed to be on the floor. That's
Yes, I remember the sequence. Yeah,
he
and he's like,
remembers. And
just checking in,
Jesse,
man.
yeah, and legit like
I think it's
Mike
like he's not allowed to check in right now because it's not like a stop and play.
right, and Chris Paul is like he was like, that's a technical. We're supposed to get a free throw, blah, 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 blah. And then Mike Wilson told him, he was like, I'll smack the shit out of you. Like that's what that reminded me of. And but instead of somebody wanting to fight the other person, it was two nerds battling it out.
That's it's funny, or anybody listening. That wasn't even the end of the sequence between McVay and LaFleur. So after all that, again, it's late in the fourth quarter. This has been several minutes of play stopping, and the Packers still have the ball. I think LaFleur eventually opts to take he opts not to take the timeout and let the clock roll. And then Sean McVay still takes a timeout. Like, I don't know if LaFleur was just looking over there like, the hell is your problem, man?
That's super.
That's sick.
That's super again,
that's like
Chris
a new
Paul
level of
right
perversion. Yeah, that's a new level of perversion. I don't know. It's just because I'm a Sean McVay homer, which is unfortunate because he's a Rams head coach. But like Chris Paul, I think is like, real teacher. Are you going to collect the homework? Sean McVay's just like, I don't know. Like he'll fuck with you in like the most the most subtly messed up way of like, yeah, 5-minute stoppage late in the fourth quarter, and LaFleur's like, let's go, and McVay's just like, oh, by the way, I'm going to take my time out.
That's the kind of thing where like, I don't know, somebody like Dan Campbell or like Antonio Pierce, they would like throw their headset and be like,
"Oh, they would get yes, exactly." Oh, see, exactly.
But instead, it's just two nerds just being like, "Oh, well, okay."
Oh, Sean McVay, what a guy! What a guy! All right, moving on. We got the Miami Dolphins here. They sit at 2-3. I gave them a D. And I wrote, actually, I have two things, but the first one is, we all owe Tua Tagovailoa an apology. Like, it is crazy. His stocks have skyrocketed since going out injured on Thursday night because, yeah, this team without him.
Do we? Do we really?
We do, man. Are you watching these?
No, I think this is a bigger issue with the fact that they're not biting the bullet and doing what I've been suggesting this whole time. Dolphins country, let's swim.
Okay, no, that is what did you give them?
I gave them a C-, and my only note was McDaniel needs to text Russell Wilson, "Hey, you up, winky face."
No, see, you're not thinking big enough, man. Mike McDaniels needs to take a look in the mirror, or we need to start having a conversation. No. We just praised Matt LaFleur and the Packers for the job they did. I'm just saying, like, I understand, like,
yeah, I mean, let's not get
the Dolphins. There's a little. It's funny because they have what is objectively one of the best offenses we've seen the past 3 years. But when it's this bad, I just think, I don't know, man. Are you just gonna sit here and take this? Like, that's really how I feel. Like, it feels like they're just gonna sit here and take this. When my thought is, you are the head coach. Like, it's feeling like Mike McDaniels is going full Darvin Ham, going, this is a good ass game over here, man.
So yeah,
you're the coach in it, man.
This isn't to let McDaniel off the hook at all, but like, not everybody. Like, I think Matt LaFleur is more of the exception of how perverted his play calling is, more so than like. I think Mike McDaniel is like a casual, like, smart offensive mind, whereas Matt LaFleur is legitimately an insane person who's like, yeah, we're gonna run this insane, sweep scheme with Malik Willis. Like, I think, what he did with Malik Willis is more of an exception than it is, the standard.
Don't get me wrong, yeah. I think both things can be true. Where we are praising LaFleur for the work he did in weeks 2 through 4, but also they don't have to totally change what they're doing, which is essentially what LaFleur did with the insane run designs he was using. Yeah. But I don't know, it just feels like they're not doing anything, and they're really just hoping. the past
Well,
2 weeks has them been hoping, can Skylar Thompson or Snoop Huntley make some of these throws, and it's clear they can't make like any of them.
so they tried so that's what I'm saying. They tried the run game with Devin A. Chain, whatever. They tried that, and then they were like, okay, that's not working. Or let's try Skylar Thompson. Now they're trying Tyler Huntley, and they're realizing like, wow, both of these guys are awful. Like I can't even scheme them into getting big yard situations
But
with Tyreek
but the
Hill and whatnot.
perspective there too is that, again, with the Tua offense, which feels insane saying that, but it's true, is the Dolphins offense under McDaniels and Tua is so unique in that it really is just incredibly practiced. We need these exact personnel. Like we need Tua, we need Tyreek Hill, we need Jalen Waddle, we need Raheem Mostert, we need Devin Achane. Nobody else works in this offense, and so we're seeing the flip side of that. And so, but I think even with those guys, even without Tua, is like I think they're still than talented enough to be doing
Well,
something. And the offense has just been really poor the past 2 weeks without.
that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm like, I don't know how much this is a Tua thing more so than they just need somebody with just even a little bit of arm strength. And Tyler Huntley's not that, and Skylar Thompson definitely isn't that. So that's why I'm saying, call up Russell Wilson so you can have him fill in that
Is this you
blank
implying that Russell
canvas.
Wilson is closer to Tua Tagovailoa than we think he is?
Yeah, a little
Oh,
bit.
that's gross. I'm sorry, man. I don't even
Like I
love
don't.
Tua like that, but
Tua has a better arm than him right now, but like I think you can slot
Tua's
in
the
somebody
weirdest.
into that
Like
job.
Tua's like the weirdest 10th to 15th ranked quarterback in the NFL because he has an incredibly specific skill set. But I don't think that should detract from him being incredibly borderline elite at what he does.
So I've been watching him since Alabama. So like I've
Like look at it.
seen
Like look at it
the
this way. Like I'm a Justin Fields guy, but Justin Fields clearly cannot do what Tua does. Like I don't think there's that many guys in the NFL who can do what Tua does, including the really great quarterbacks.
Tua is a moron who will jump into danger. So I think maybe that's
And he
another
still did
part of
it.
it. That would,
And he still did it.
I don't know. I want to see it rather than them put in Tyler Huntley and expect that
Yeah, I guess
production.
we'll see. We'll see then.
I think if you'd slot in literally anybody who can do again, their whole scheme is like, all right, sure we're gonna have these two safeties in the backfield, but like again, we've got Tyreek Hill, we've got plenty of speed guys. Just get open, and as long as you can make the throws and not be disastrously inaccurate, I think you can slot in at least relatively well. I don't think Tua's garbage or anything, but I do think that what he brings is more easily able to replicate than someone like I don't know Mahomes or whatever. Like I don't think it's like that situation where it's like oh like Mahomes or Lamar like those are irreplaceable quarterbacks. I think Tua you can slot him in and do roughly within the ballpark of what they want to do.
No, we're about to find out the boundaries of Mike McDaniel's Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins, I guess, this season. All right, moving on to a team that has for sure been the biggest surprise of the season so far, and that is the Minnesota Vikings, who remain the only or one of the only two undefeated teams in the NFL so far. They are 5-0. I think it goes without saying that we have the same grade for this team.
No, it's A plus.
It's an A plus.
I genuinely. This is the only thing that I wrote. I genuinely thought they were going to be last in their division. I genuinely
I
thought
don't.
that. Like I didn't think
Yeah, I don't think that's.
I didn't
No,
think they were going to be like overtly bad at anything.
they'd
But
be
like
last in a really strong division. Yeah, that's fine,
yeah,
which is
like
fine. Yeah.
I thought their defense would have been solid enough, and I thought their offense probably would have been. I think their offense would have went through like an identity crisis a little bit, trying to figure out like what they want to do in terms of like what their scheme looks like. But instead, they have everything kind of set in stone, and they're just like, yeah, I just need you to go in there and do what I need from you.
Yeah, I really appreciate this team because it's very clear they're going. They're NFL is kind of weird with this. Like they are 5-0, they're the best team in the league right now, but they're very much still like underdog, like longtime quarterback left, starred pass rusher left because they thought they'd be going to better teams that are arguably still better, you might say, like projecting for the rest of the season. And so it's cool to see a team take that and be like, no, we're still a very good team. Like, yeah, Kevin O'Connell, very clearly, coach of the year. Brian Flores, cooking with that
Yeah.
defense. Sam Darnold, too, who isn't going to be the MVP, but is showing very clearly that he can be a very good starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think this week against the Jets really said a lot. Like that was the game that I was actually able to see all of it within live timing because of how early it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just really noteworthy worthy that even when Aaron Jones went down, and it was very obvious that they were missing that like added elements of their offense to sort
Mm-hmm.
of like the reason why they even remotely worked is because they were able to have an even balance between everything. Once he went down, they try I forget the name of their running backs, but they tried to replicate that and it didn't really work. Like despite their best efforts. So then they were like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, Sam Darnold, I need you to make plays. And against a really, really good Jets secondary that game.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
coincidentally in week 5, coming up against the Jets in London too, international game, I think that was the best game the Jets defense has played still.
yeah,
Like just by
yeah, I
eye
mean,
test, like yeah, they were locking up receivers.
it also reminded me like why Rob Saleh got that job in the first place because he
Mm-hmm.
can do like very cool scheme stuff on the defensive side of the ball. He made a note that they were doing something very particular and how they were guarding Justin Jefferson. Some of them led to a whole bunch of holding and pass interference plays, but some of it was bullshit, some of it wasn't, and I think it really took Justin Jefferson out of his slide, who was
Mm-hmm.
complaining all game about the physicality. So I was like, oh, like they're pissing him off, and he's obviously the best receiver in the league. So I was like, okay, like there's something there, but to that point, Sam Darnold still figured it out, which
Mm-hmm.
he could have very easily shrunk, and they could have very easily lost that game if he lost his cool.
Yeah, that's it's another one of those eye test things where he had a bad game, but a bad game you'd expect from a guy who's getting hammered by a defense like that, and
Yeah,
not like he lost his cool and couldn't like keep it together in the pocket. Like, yeah, they just it was a real great defensive game by both of these defenses. Really, that was it.
yeah,
Oh, I also want to shout out the offensive line for the Vikings and Christian Darrisaw, especially at left tackle. They've probably been the best offensive line in the league, at least top 3. So that also, bears mentioning with the guy at quarterback, though he
yeah.
has been good. Yes. All right. Moving on to back to the Northeast, we got the New England Patriots, who are at 1-4. I don't really have anything for these guys. I gave them a C. What did you give them?
I gave them a D. I feel so bad for Jacoby Brissett. I feel so bad.
Mm.
He takes a very thankless job at shielding Drake May from crucifixion, not even criticism,
Yeah,
crucifixion with a group of practice squad players on offense. I mean, Jalen Polk is a wide is WR 3 4 maybe, and that's his number one option you know, I mean, bottom tier rush game. I hope when it comes time for Jacoby Brissett to hit the open market again and teams are looking for a quarterback, I hope that they don't place the blame on him because the offensive line is terrible and he has no weapons.
I
The
don't
only
think any
reason
reasonable team would. No. Mm.
what keeps them from getting an F is because that defense is so good
Yeah,
that
that's why I gave them a C.
they
Truthfully,
they
yeah.
sh- they shocked the Bengals and took the Seahawks to overtime. That says a lot about a team that cannot score the fucking football on offense.
Yeah, traded away Matt Judon, who was really their only big name per se on defense. But yeah, Christian Gonzalez has stayed healthy. He's looked really great. He looks like a great 2. He's got potential to be a top guy, but he's one of the best or better CB1s in the league. And they've been doing this without Christian Barmore too, who I think is still on IR or PUP. So yeah, I don't know. When it comes to defense, this fucking organization, they know witchcraft or something. So yeah, defense has still been great. And yeah, shout out to Jacoby Brissett for a very awful job yesterday. Right. Another new team, well, as new in their name, is the New Orleans Saints. They are at 2-2. What did you give them?
I gave them a flat C.
Hmm.
I wanted Clint Kubiak to really reimagine the offense, and the first 2 weeks gave me that a little bit, where I was like, man, he's really rebuilding Derek Carr in his image.
Mm-hmm.
And it's grown really apparent that whenever they face a defense that isn't completely bottom tier,
Mm-hmm.
um, they tend to sort of flop around. Like again, they won those two games off of two just awful defenses this year: the Cowboys and I forget the other team. But yeah, they shrink at the presence of anything even remotely real on a defensive front, and then it sort of brings back this tried and true check down car, get the small yards type of situations. Um, but yeah, I mean, their defense is still pretty scrappy, so it puts them bang in the middle, kind of where I have the whole division, pretty much outside of Carolina.
Yeah, I give them a B minus, kind of for the same reasons. Funny enough, just because I think they are going to prove to be they're probably the biggest boom or bust team in the league. But the boom is enough that I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. It's funny. I only wrote one down. I wrote exactly one thing down for them, and it's Pete Carmichael. I hope you watch this offense and you feel a great deep shame. That's all.
He's see when they finally went into week 3 and they like quieted down a little bit. He was like, "See, I could do that."
But I hear you, yeah. But it's still early, so the first 2 weeks was we can be an explosive offense, and then weeks 3 and 4 was, oh right, defenses will scheme for this, and so
Yeah,
I'm curious to see what they do for the rest of the season, like whether they ask Alvin Kamara to take a bigger role in the offense, which you're always gambling there with his health and his
yeah,
production. Really, he's so up and down, and I guess same thing with Carr, like turn there's a fine line. You have to balance out the check downs with the explosives. With
yeah.
Carr, it's like he's never been a great intermediate guy. So if you can get if you can at least set him up for the explosives, then whatever you have to do to get there is worth it, really.
Yeah.
And then you already mentioned the defense, which has been pretty solid. And I think I mentioned him last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, but Brian Brzee and Carl Granderson have been really great. Granderson, I think, has been one of the top guys in the league in terms of pressures. I'm pretty sure he's top 10. Oh, before we move on, that's funny. I actually wrote this down because I had no idea. Did you know Pete Carmichael is actually employed this season? Do you want to guess where?
Oh no.
It's so obvious. It hurts. It's funny. It's so on the nose.
Oh please don't no.
He's a senior offensive assistant coach in Denver.
You know
That's
what?
hilarious, man.
You know what? If it gets Bo Nix out of there, I'll be okay.
He's doing
Right
God's
on.
work. You don't even notice it.
You gotta Pete. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, two more teams with new in their name. They come from the same state, technically. Well, I guess different state if you think about their stadium.
Yeah.
First one's the New York Giants. They sit at 2-3. With all due respect, I wrote exactly one line, and it's the shortest thing I've written in this entire thing. I gave them a C, and I wrote, "I'm just here for Malik Neighbors."
I gave them a D minus, and I said, Dexter Lawrence, Malik Neighbors, I know you're trying your best.
Yeah. Dexter Lawrence too. Shout out. Kayvon Thibodeau, still up and down, but the ups are very exciting, but up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've learned nothing from this team other than Malik Neighbors is a lot better than we thought he was, which is impressive.
Weirdly good game against the Seahawks, which, again, question marks just all around that
We're gonna
Seattle
get
team.
to that team. Yeah, the Giants. Shrug. They're
Bro,
not as bad as
what are
we
you
thought they
supposed to
could be.
say about them? Like,
Yeah.
it's still, bottom 2 in the league, but, like, 2 and 3. 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 2 and 3 Not embarrassing, I guess.
Not embarrassing. The Giants and the Panthers are still the worst two teams in the league, but they're not embarrassing somehow? Question mark.
Yeah,
Which
like
kind of is true by eye test for what it's
that.
worth.
I mean
Is
that's why I say
true, yes.
that's why I say the Jaguars are the worst team in the league
Oh,
because like
sorry. Yes, no.
they're actively embarrassing.
Yeah. That other team I was mentioning that they share a home with, that's the New York Jets. We're also 2-3. We've talked around this team a lot. We've already talked about this team a lot every week this season. Give them a D plus.
Oh, I gave them a C minus. The
Really?
defense is doing what they're supposed to do,
They can, yeah.
but Hackett is a moron, and Rogers looks really old.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
just it's very clear.
I want to note that Garrett Wilson
Mm.
had a great game against that Vikings scheme. 13 for 101 yards, going on 22 targets. So Rodgers was trying to get the
Yeah, I
ball
was
to
gonna say.
him a lot. A lot of times, again, when I was watching it, it felt like Rodgers was just trying to force a play, and that's why he had so many picks, and that's why he couldn't convert, on these third and out situations. 8
Yeah.
yards a catch though, roughly. It's a weird game from them all around. Where like
That's
again,
see,
it
that's why I can't
there's a couple
in good faith give them a
there's a couple
C. Mm.
there's a couple of plain misreads between Rodgers and Wilson, where like Wilson tries to do something like pretty nifty in terms of the route to try and shake the corner, and Rodgers just chucks it up anyway, expecting him to commit to the route. And I'm just like, why are you throwing these 50-50 balls at him when Wilson isn't even done with the route yet?
That's what I mean. Like, we can't really tell where they are. Like, I hear what you're saying, but that's like, again, this is like why I'm so critical of the Jets coaching. Where it's like, I can't tell if Aaron Rodgers is out of schedule. If it's Aaron Rodgers or Garrett Wilson is out of schedule, I can't tell if it's one of these guys is trying to take control of the play call or the route or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I just can't tell. That said, I think it's very
It,
clear this offense won't be good enough to be as competitive as they want to be,
this
and
game
it's
this game finally established to me that this is not a Garrett Wilson issue. Is ultimately what I came away with. This isn't really
I
on
get what you're
him.
saying, but like I don't want to necessarily. I think he's incredibly talented, but I don't want to necessarily give him credit in that way. Like I think the Jets offense is just way more flawed than we thought, and it's Rodgers is a 40-year-old man coming off an Achilles injury. Nate Hackett is not a good offensive play caller in 2024. This
Yeah,
running back room, similarly to the Falcons, is clearly very talented, but it's imbalanced and it's this they don't fit into this scheme necessarily. And also the receiver core construction we've mentioned before is really bad outside of Garrett Wilson. Also, credit Alan Lazard has been pretty good so far this
I
season,
I want to
but
note there's a play towards the end where the Vikings finally sealed the game, and Stephon
mm,
Gilmore gets just a plain old pick, and I look at the route and I'm just like, this is just baffling how he could not only throw that awful ball, but that Hackett could call that play in the first place to where that's even an option to begin with. So it's just like, again, I don't place this much on the guys because the talent is very evident outside of a Rodgers who looks very old and very banged up. I mean, there was a play where like he like fucked his leg up real bad, and if it wasn't for some roughing the punter thing that got the Jets back on the field, he would have been off the he would have been done for the rest of the game, and it would have been Tyrod Taylor. But instead, Rodgers was like, "Oh yeah, let me go ahead and try this again," and hobbles back out there. So it's just like
oh yeah, I remember that.
it's just like, all right, like what's the deal here? Like what's the active plan? Like I think a lot of it goes back on Rodgers wanting a very dumb stooge to call bad plays, and Rodgers wants to take liberties with how he's throwing these balls up, and he's given a lot of stupid 50-50s out there.
Mm. Yeah, I forgot where I heard this, but essentially the Jets are running a mid 2000s offense in 2024 is
Yeah,
essentially what it is.
yeah. Yeah, like Stevie Johnson would be hailing in a lot of these footballs.
Yeah, this Jets offense, not pretty. Well, speaking of another offense that has not been pretty, um, Philadelphia Eagles. They sit at 2-2. What grade did you give them?
I gave them a flat C.
Hmm.
A flat. I mean, they're they're strong enough to where they'll probably still make the playoffs just off of sheer talent. But like, and again, I think a strong year from Saquon, a strong year from Goddard. It's like, yeah, man, like everything lines up for this team to be a Super Bowl contender, and they're just not. The defense looks very, again, very fight or flight, hit or miss. Fangio doesn't really have anything on them so far. It's just they're the most talented team in the league, and I still don't feel great about it. And a lot of some of it'll go on Jalen Hurts, who again I don't really like, but a lot of this is going towards Nick Sirianni, who has no type of identity on either side of the ball. He has no type of game plan. It just seems like he's like, hey, y'all go out there and do that. He's like Steve Kerr in that sense.
I gave them a D because I think I really because when you say they're arguably the most talented team in the league, like yeah, I think a lot of people say that. I don't know. It's very clear to me that yeah, they're top three. I think. All I'm gonna say is I'm gonna really enjoy Nick Sirianni sitting next to Bill Simmons talking about Oscar nominees next year. That's all. That's
Damn,
all.
he's not even sticking with football anymore. He's like, listen, I need you to start talking about
Yeah,
Tom Hanks.
don't talk about football, please. Talk about anything else, man. Oh man. Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's
It's
not.
incredibly frustrating. Like it's frustrating to watch because it's. This is gonna sound insane to say, but I thought it, so I feel like I have to say it out loud. The Jags and the Eagles are very similar because they're incredibly talented teams. The Jags not as much, obviously, but it's just like
Yeah,
what is holding you back from taking not even taking a step? What is holding you back from simply doing your base level?
at least there's like signals from the Eagles that like show that there's like a
They're
talented team
trying.
underneath.
Yeah,
Like
and
the
truthfully
Jaguars doesn't even look like there's like much life underneath the surface there.
underneath,
At least the
yeah.
Eagles seem to be like giving an effort. I mean, that's how they beat the Saints, just off of
Hmm.
sheer, willpower.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to move on from the Eagles because it makes me sad. Just want good football teams to be good. That's all. That's all.
That's real.
Speaking of good football teams and a man who is always in charge of them, I'm gonna apologize to this team before I even say their name. Their name is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They sit at 3-2. I gave them a B. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna change it right here. I'm gonna give them a B plus because
Okay.
yeah, I had low expectations, very low expectations for this team going to the season, and they've been great. They've been really great. They're kind of unsexy, but that's kind of why they're great. Grant, given all the problems a lot of the teams in the league have right now,
Yeah.
they're like model citizen, fundamentally sound, excellence of execution.
Yeah.
So
So
mm,
I haven't watched a ton of Steelers footage, so before this I had to do the knowledge, and
mhm,
I gave them a B minus because of
mhm.
this, where they could really use some dynamic receiving option outside of Pickens,
They could, yeah.
who's very out like he's not a WR1 to me. I think he's a solid tier
He
below.
is, but he's very much like he also kind of feels like a 2000s or early 2010s receiver of like just throw the ball to me, like I'm gonna beat the guy and get it. Like
Yeah,
he's like not quite Mike Evans, but he is like similar in skill set. Like yeah, like
but
you want to
he's
throw him
clear.
50-50 ball.
But like where Mike Evans was like, he's always been sort of an elite guy. George Pickens always registers to me as like a tier below that,
Yes, yes,
where
yeah, that's valid.
you definitely want like another guy to make these big explosive plays, especially when George Pickens gets hassled by a Dallas secondary that was giving him fits for a lot of that game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, they just they lack explosion, which I know you kind of go for their meat and potatoes with Arthur Smith and Fields, but
Mm-hmm.
who again is pretty revelatory, real surprising how comfortable he is behind that line of scrimmage. But
Mm-hmm.
really, a lot of this that'll get them into wild card contention is that defense.
I mean, yeah, I gave them the defense was enough for me to give them a B/B minus, but I think the flashes we Arthur Smith and this offense have gotten out of Justin Fields was enough to give me a little bit. Because that was the thing with Justin Fields in Chicago, which I've defended him for at least 2 years now. Not like totally, like yeah, he still has the issue sometimes of holding onto the ball too long. But even through only 5 weeks with the Steelers offense versus several years in Chicago, he's able to snap out of it at least. Like he will return to it. But even in the middle of games, there was a point on Sunday Night Football this past week against the Cowboys where he was holding onto the ball longer than 3 seconds in like the first quarter, I think, maybe like 3 or 4 plays. And I don't know if that was as simple as a team talk or like changing the play call up, but you know what I mean? Like, especially with the Steelers and the kind of environment Mike Tomlin has, like I feel
Yeah,
like for them, it's as simple as like you're holding onto the ball too long and he goes, okay.
he was like, "Oh shit,
Like
all right, word."
like it feels like so simple in this environment versus in Chicago. It's this whole media circus of like, what is
It's a
Matt
lot of
Eberflus doing? Is this Justin
yeah,
Fields' fault? Is it not? And what in the Steelers in 5 weeks and with again Arthur Smith, a guy who wasn't a very good head coach, but clearly a very decent offensive mind. You can see like, yeah, these guys are making it work. And
yeah.
we've had games this season where Fields won games with his legs, managed games with his legs, and he's also managed game with his arm, which was what he couldn't do in Chicago. So
Yeah, there were a couple of plays where I was like, "Damn, he's really hauling that shit downfield." They would really, 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 really benefit from Devonte Adams,
they
who
really would. Mm-hmm.
the reason
There's
why
two teams in this league, I think. Yeah.
the reason why I was always like why I wanted to see Devontae on the Raiders is because of that sort of theoretically the culture that brings. The
Mm-hmm.
Steelers brings that, but on a much much more stable level where it's like
Yeah.
okay, like you've got that sort of toughness. All they need is the dynamic side of it, and that's what Devontae would bring. Now you're going into a situation that isn't so shaky
Mm-hmm.
theoretically. Worst case scenario ends up on the Jets or the Chiefs.
Oh, ugly thoughts.
Or he teased the Ravens, which I don't like. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I could do a separate
So,
podcast
somebody,
about
somebody,
this.
somebody made a really, really funny joke where they were like, "Heck yeah, go ahead and trade for another guy that can block for Lamar Jackson running the
And
football."
Jackson.
I was like, "That's awesome."
All right, moving on. We've got a team that is performing below expectations. That's the San Francisco 49ers. They are 2-3, 5 weeks into the season. What grade did you give them?
I gave them a B/B minus.
Hmm.
Um, I think the Brock Purdy thing definitely helps a lot, and the fact that they're getting fantastic production out of Jordan Mason, which
Mm-hmm.
I'll put a pin in that for a later point.
I
Um,
do want to point out just stat wise, Jordan Mason is second in total yards and second in rushing yards over expected. You want to know
so
who's
that
first in both of those? It's Derrick Henry. So basically, Jordan Mason is the best non-Derrick Henry running back in the league right now, which is a
so
pretty
that
good title to have.
that will add to my point later. Only
Mm-hmm.
reason they're not higher, obviously, is that they just lose games that they should definitely win. Like it's really as simple as
No,
like
yeah, they're two
there's
and
really
three,
yeah,
and I'm like, as much
they
as I
should be
like,
like 4-1.
yeah, it's weird. It's
Like
weird in a good way.
the talent's definitely there. I mean, Fred Warner is still the best
Fred
linebacker in
Warner's
the
a
league.
front runner for
Um,
defensive player right now, I think.
I think maybe there's consequence. These are the consequences of them mortgaging the picks, and they're not getting like a young set of legs that's like ready to replace these guys.
Mm.
But it did make me ask within that pick, issue. Given that you have Jordan Mason being, just off numbers, the second best running back in the league, right? Is it not time to move off of Christian McCaffrey? Considering that he has arthritis in both of his knees, should you not bite the bullet now?
Ankles,
Considering
thank you.
ankle, yeah, fucked up lower body.
Yes, generally speaking, yes.
Yeah, he's got he's got arthritis in his goddamn ankles, and I think if you're able to plug and play Jordan Mason, who, mind you, nobody knew who the fuck Jordan Mason was before this year. So, given that you can plug Jordan Mason in and come even remotely close to replicating that production to a certain degree, again, Christian McCaffrey was still, God tier last year, but regardless, should you not take that and be like, hey, you need a running back? Take Christian McCaffrey. I'll take a second round pick.
I gave the Niners a C.
Oh, okay.
Just, it's, I don't know, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of, like, they could have done more. I don't know what I would have done in this team, but I don't know, it's really just vibes. I mean, yeah, offensive team stats, they're 10th in points per game, they're second in yards, they're 7th in EPA per play. Defense, they're 3rd in points per game, they're 8th in yards, they're 8th in EPA per play. Like, this is clearly still one of the best teams in the league. Just, yeah,
they're, they're
they've
feeling
lost games in the exact perfect way that you would lose these games.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it's
when
Super Bowl hangover, man.
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I mean, they've done this, 2 years now, where they're going off of these Super Bowl hangovers. Like, naturally, they're going to be a little banged up. They're going to be tired. But really, I gave them a B off the strength of, like, they're getting production from places that they did not expect, a la Jordan Mason. And Brock Purdy, top 5 quarterback.
Brock Purdy is beating the allegations. It's 4th in total
my
yards.
allegations specifically.
Yeah. It's 4th in total yards. He's 7th in EPA per play. And like most of the guys, I like to think most of the guys I point out with these stats, if you haven't watched a lot of his tape, he's
that boy's nice.
I think just because I don't know if we've said it out loud on this show. I think the thing with Purdy is, the allegation is that, he's a system quarterback. But the backhanded compliment was he was the best system quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has had so far in his 49ers tenure. And it's becoming clear, like, they are making each other better. That Purdy has gotten exponentially better. What is this, his third season now?
He's bailed Shanahan out of a couple boneheaded plays.
This season in particular has been weird because it feels like I don't think Shanahan has been poor as a play caller. I don't think he's been as good, without his team in full health.
Yeah.
Debo was out for a game or two, and McCaffrey's been out all season. But but Purdy as a quarterback has just been. I think I saw a crazy stat that the Niners are actually last in yards after the catch, which is nuts because they've been top 3. I think they've been top 2 every year since Kyle Shanahan took over.
So, yeah. I mean that's sort of the fault of not having Ayuk fully locked in. Which, in fairness, last game he did finally start to emerge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was averaging like 41 yards a game, and then he finally broke 100. Yes.
Yeah,
Sunday, I think.
It had me thinking, like, all right, man, like, is Juwan Jennings just going to take your job now? Like, do you need Ayuk? Like, again, it seems like they're just plugging in these guys who are just waiting to give these, like, 90-yard games every game.
Oh, man. This division is so weird. And, we're going to stay in the division because the next team follows them. That's the Seattle Seahawks, who is drives me up the wall because I think highly of this team, but also, like I've just said, this division is so weird. I said this division was going to be competitive, and it has been. Yeah, the Seattle Seahawks at 3-2, leaders of the AFC West. I'll let you start. What did you grade them?
I gave them a B minus. Um, Again, it really can't be overstated how bad that offensive line takes away
Yeah,
from a really talented unit. It says a lot that they still have 42-year-old Jason Peters on the practice squad just in case.
just in
Um,
case. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, otherwise, like they're just like quietly good at everything. Again, same way that I predicted them. I expected them to be a little lower. Just take the offensive line and given their lack of boom sort of potential. Again, I liken them to like how the Pacers were for a lot of the 2000 for the mid 2010s, where it's like, all right, like they'll probably be like the 7-8 seed, but nothing like pretty dynamic. And it's sort of, spinning
Mhm.
my way in that regard where it's like Geno Smith is still really good. You got, you know, maybe the best receiving trio quietly between Smith, Metcalf, and they still got Lockett all these years later. Great secondary, fresh defensive mind that'll definitely, help within the long term. Their secondary is already seeing the benefits of that. But yeah, I mean, just dropping really dumb games, which, comes again to a bad offensive line where Geno Smith can hardly get into rhythm.
I gave them a C, and yeah, I
I
don't know.
know that hurts. I know that hurts for you.
I think more highly of this team than a lot of people, but I don't know. I'm calling it how I see it with them. Like I didn't expect to love them this much, but starting on the defense because the defense is pretty straightforward. Yeah, we've talked about their secondary. Reek Woolen and Devin Weatherspoon, awesome, arguably the best corner duo in the league. The injuries to Boye Mafe at edge and then Byron Murphy, who was really great the first few weeks of the season, have really hurt their defense. They are still 10th in yards per game allowed, 7th in passing, but 20th in rushing yards allowed.
Yep.
So that's really hurt them in terms of having to sustain or keep the defense out there. Like I think they're the only team when to call this off. They're tied for ninth and third down conversion rate, like defensively. But yeah, I think it's the teams being able to run the ball on them, which we saw with the Giants this past week. Like the Giants ran the ball all over them. Granted, again with the injuries, but yeah, with that secondary, when teams can run the ball like that, then they're gonna have to. When you have to bring an extra corner or safety down, then yeah, the rest of the defense is out of whack. But yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, like I know you disagree, but I don't know, man. I see the work Geno Smith is doing, and I see a top 5 quarterback, man. He's first in total yards. He's fifth in completion percentage, and he's doing this while being the third most pressured quarterback in the league. He's been pressured 76 times. The only guys in front of him are literally Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson, and he's doing this all with, granted, who I think has been very good, Ryan Grubb. It's his first year as OC in Seattle, coming off 2 years in Washington, University of Washington. But Geno's doing this while handling protections and calls at the line of scrimmage. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, and then you mentioned the skill group, which is elite for sure. Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker at running back, and then JSN, DK Metcalf, and Lockett. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it feels insane because it feels like borderline malpractice at this point because we saw flashes of this last year, and now it's clear. Like, it's very, very clear. With a good offensive line, this is a top 5 offense in the league. But as it is, it's a shame. And at least this past week, they've lost Abe Lucas and George Fant. They're both on IR and PUP, I think, respectively. So it's just crazy too, because the left side of this line with Charles Cross is really great. Charles Cross is probably has been one of the 3 or 5 best tackles in the league so far this season. But the entire rest of the line, uh, it is not good. It is not good. That's all I'm going to say. It is not good. I forgot who I said this for earlier I think this was just the Eagles a few minutes ago, but man, I just want to watch good football teams be good, man. It's a damn shame. It is a damn shame.
Bengals, Ravens.
Bengals. A lot of teams like this year. All right. We're almost at the bottom of the list. We are at the letter T now. We've got 3 teams left in the entire league. back down south. We are visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 3-2. They're also a funny one that I think should be better. But injuries have hurt them a little. I gave them a B minus.
I gave them the same.
Yeah, defense clearly. I think they're the. I don't think they're the most injured defense, but in terms of peak versus where they are right now, outside of the Rams, obviously, yeah, this defense has not been good past 2 weeks without Antoine Winfield or Kalijah Kancey, the latter of whom hasn't played all season. Winfield especially, though, like it's crazy. He really brings the secondary together. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave them a half baked analogy while I was like half asleep.
Mm.
Um, I just said that I don't really get them. At their worst, they're like bottom tier, paying luxury prices on great players,
Mm.
and at their best, they're beating the best teams in football, like the Lions.
Yeah, they don't have a high. They don't have a good floor. Like they don't even have a solid floor. Yeah, it's really
I,
weird.
I compared it to like having a Ferrari and putting like a used car battery and a bad alternator in there. Like sure you might get the thing to start and it'll sound loud for a minute, but at some point on the highway that thing's just gonna turn off on you.
I mean, yeah, this offense still continues to be when it's been healthy. This offense is still great. You know, if you protect Baker and let him find Evans or Godwin, it's one of the better, arguably top 10 offenses in the league. I've shouted out Bucky Irving on this pod at least twice, but adding him to the running back room has given them like the run game hasn't been good still, but it is a lot more solid and it gives them a little more balance. What I hadn't noticed until I dived deeper was that right tackle Luke Goedeke has been out since week 1. He's still in concussion protocol, and yeah, their line has not looked good since week 1. So that would be the number one prop. The injuries to Goedeke and Winfield are probably the things to monitor for this team. Like just those two injuries, I think having both those guys back will see the floor for this team rise. But I really liked how they drafted too. They got Jalen McMillan, I think, in the 3rd round. He's injured right now, but yeah, is this like I guess this is the theme of the NFL season, which is like, man, if teams could just stay healthy, which is say that every year, but yeah, just good football teams being good. It'd be nice
Yeah.
if we could see it every week, but unfortunately, we don't. Granted, it's not the Bucs' fault necessarily. It is. It is. They are mostly just injured. I think.
Yeah.
Just because I thought of it. Yeah, first year OC Liam Cohn taking over for Canales has been pretty good. Still, like the offense is still running pretty well.
Yeah.
All right. One more in the letter T. We are still down south, or yeah, still pretty deep south.
Yeah.
We are in Tennessee with the Titans. They are 1-3. What did you give them? They're kind of weird.
Question marks is what I gave them.
I gave them a C for what it's worth. I gave them a C.
Like they're like F quality, but they don't like feel like an. It's really confusing. I don't know what to make it. I mean, obviously, Will Levis is like, people have been saying it a lot. He's like a movie quarterback, or he's like almost comically.
This picture will live rent free in my head for the rest of my life.
There are certain moments where they'll put him on the camera and they'll be like, "What's going on through Will Levis's mind?" And he's like, very
nothing is going through his mind. He clearly wants a hot dog.
No,
there's nothing going through that guy's head.
Or like he'll very obviously like mouth. He'll be like, "I don't know, my shoulder," and I'm just like, "Oh my god, this dude is a moron." Clearly they don't really have much of a backup in terms of like, there's
Will
no
Levis getting injured in week 4 is how I discovered that Mason Rudolph is on a team again.
Yeah, like they still got like good players. It's just like
I gave him a C, which is funny because
I guess I give them a D. I guess.
Yes. Like it feels weird. No, I'm giving them a C, which doesn't make sense because my logic going into the season for them was we're going to find out how good Will Levis is. I think I've seen enough that he's not good enough. But the foundation they've built is still pretty solid. I don't want to say how good it is, but it's solid enough that like if they find another guy, whether that's a young quarterback they draft or whoever, I don't know off the top of my head who's the next journeyman, like a Darnold or Fields, who are the next of those guys. But I think they're solid enough that when they plug the next guy in,
you know what this
like,
sounds like? This
oh,
sounds like a Gardner
oh
Minshew
no,
team.
oh
You thought I was going to
yeah,
say Russell Wilson?
it's something disgusting. Like, yeah, I guess, yeah. Like, honestly,
This seems like a stopgap Gardner Minshew, which is again just putting like 30-year-old Will Levis on ahead
if
of
they
regular
don't
Will
love
Levis.
if they don't like any of the quarterbacks in next year's draft enough, then yeah, I would just go with Minshew, and then draft not random, but draft if there's decent quarterbacks left in like round 3 or 4, then yeah, you drop a flyer
Again,
on those guys, obviously. But
about to get ready to learn Shadur Sanders in a minute.
oh my god, oh, those are awful vibes. Imagine like Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward in Tennessee. Oh, that's
Dude,
gross.
Shadur
Ooh.
Sanders. You got Deion Sanders as the DB coach, eventually
Oh
rising up
man.
succession style again. Then you got the Sanders team in Tennessee. This will be the third time that he's done it. It's awesome.
On the offensive side of the ball, do you want to point out that the guys they drafted on the line, they drafted J.C. Latham. He's been playing left tackle this year, and Peter Skoronski's been coincidentally left guard. They drafted him last year. They haven't blown the doors off, but they look like NFL starters. Which, given how badly some teams have missed on O linemen in the first round, I think it's good. I mean that sincerely. It's a very backhanded compliment, but I mean it sincerely. Especially because the right side of their line, much like Seattle's, is quite bad. I wrote this down, so I do want to point it out. Their defense has the strangest collective team stat. They are 18th in points per game allowed. They are first in yards allowed. They're 5th in EPA per play. But also, they are rock bottom 32nd in pressures.
Don't fucking get it.
If anybody has seen more than like half an hour of non-Renzo Titans footage, can you let me know what's going on with that defense? Because none of those numbers make sense to me.
I mean, now I don't even feel good about giving him a D. Because what are you supposed to give him?
Like is the first in yards per game thing like a 2010 Chargers thing where the special teams is that bad? Like, is the other team starting at like the 50-yard line every time? Like, I don't understand. So strange.
I don't get it.
All right.
I'm glad we're gonna end on good football at least.
We're gonna end with a bang. Thankfully, keeping with this alphabetical. Truthfully, this is the number one reason I wanted to go in this alphabetical order.
That's real.
We're ending with a bang with the other biggest surprise of the season so far. That is the Washington football team, aka the Commanders, who are 4-1, and it goes without saying they are getting an A+, arguably an A++, because what the hell is going on with this team? Jaden Daniels, man. Dude. He got 1,135 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 8.8 yards per attempt. That's second in the league, only behind Purdy. 6.1% completion percentage over expected. That's first in the league. And he's first in EPA per dropback at 0.33. And that's just passing. He's got 300 rush yards. He's got 4 touchdowns on the ground. He's first in EPA per rush attempt at 0.41. That's more than double second place, who is Jahmyr Gibbs at 0.19. And this one I think is the craziest for me. He's leading the league in runs in which he goes over 15 miles per hour. He's got 34. Behind him is Jordan Mason in 26th with 26, Lamar Jackson with 24, and Alvin Kamara with 21. Like, what the hell? This kid is awesome.
This kid is so cool. And it's just a college football team. Like, there's no like this doesn't feel very like I'm willing, professional, but it's like
I don't give a shit what Cam Taylor-Britt has to say. Like, you can call it a college football team, and I'm still going to say it's awesome because I think it is.
Also, like, Cam Taylor-Britt is talking shit like that defense isn't putrid. Like, sir, you are a part of the problem.
Before we go any crazier on Jaden Daniels or this team, I do want to point out Brian Robinson's had a good year, too. He's got 325 yards on 73 carries, and he's got 5 touchdowns. He's been really good, too.
Yeah. I mean,
this is the number one rushing team in the league, and it shows.
A+. That boy nice. That boy real nice. Cliff Kingsbury is, I mean, maybe we just, again,
I'll say sorry.
Some people should not be head coaches. Just be an OC. And clearly, Kingsbury. I mean, he's done this a few times now. Um, I wish I had all the QBs that he's fixed over the years. The only time he's kind of fucked up is just with the Cardinals, where again he's not a head coach.
I put Cliff Kingsbury, sorry, in parentheses, I guess. But yeah, he's done a really good. I think he's done a good job. That I brought this up before, especially with short game screens and also like not literally just checkdowns, but like quick passing game. That you gave Jay Daniels a good, safe like base offense to work with, but then Daniels has run away with it. Especially with this, he's made some really great throws, but the scrambling really too. It's just he's putting himself on another level. Yeah.
It can't be missed in this too that Dan Quinn is doing great stuff with a pretty raw defense as well. I mean, a couple notable guys like Bobby Wagner.
They got old ass Bobby Wagner, and I mean that as a compliment. Old ass Bobby Wagner.
Yeah,
and then they've got some real like football nerd favorites. They've got Frankie Louvu at linebacker with them too, and then Jeremy Chins at safety. But then that's also a thing too where there was not a lot of continuity on this defense. While we're talking about defense, yeah, Emmanuel Forbes thankfully does not start at cornerback for this team because he was arguably the worst starting corner in the league last year. Yeah. He drafted he has a cool name. Oh, Mike Sanderstill has been quite good, but also Jeremiah St. Juste has been good now that he doesn't have that much pressure with Forbes being like a freebie on the other side. Yeah, this defense is solid enough. Similar to the Cardinals, they've gone from better than the Cardinals defense, obviously, but similar precedent where they've gone from being like game-changingly bad bottom three to, yeah, they're a very solid defense now.
Yeah, if anything, I kind of wonder what Montez Sweat would have done in this environment had he not been traded to Chicago.
Yeah, that line would have been really good because, yeah, pass rush is kind of their weakness, like in the traditional sense of the edge rushers, like getting downhill. But yeah, John Payne and Jonathan Allen, man, I feel like because they play for Washington, in terms of talented players, regardless of position, I think Payne and Allen are probably the most unknown to casual football watchers because nobody had any reason to watch the Commanders' defense, let alone the Commanders.
That was the name I was spacing on. I was like, it's Bobby Wagner. Who the fuck out? It was Jonathan Allen. That's who I was trying to pinpoint.
Yeah, because he
was always the second punch to the Montez Sweat experience, and then he just became the number one. As
recently as last year, you had Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and then you still have them in the middle. Oh man, yeah, this team's gonna be fun to watch. I'm not I think the Commander. I'm gonna give them an A plus. I think they're gonna end the season with an A. Like they could lose every game for the rest of the season, but honestly, these first 5 weeks of Jaden Daniels are enough for me to go like that was awesome. Like
I really do think they're gonna win the division.
I think so too. Yeah, truthfully, I think
which feels insane.
They are solid enough. Like I can imagine them winning at least 10 games at this rate. They're already 4-1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it from the Eagles, and the Cowboys are just going to be the odd guys out, unfortunately.
That's the thing. Yeah, I think they are more than solid enough. I'll be interested to see when or if even Jaden Daniels hits like a slow spell, or just because he had that crazy stat. He was the first quarterback to start his career with over 80% completion percentage through his first 3 or 4 games. This past game in week 5, he finally went down to like 60 or something, like something normal, frankly.
Which again, that's against one of the best defenses in the league. The fact that he looked even remotely respectable against that, it says a lot about how he's been playing this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Commanders. I meant to say, they are more than solid enough, whereas both the Cowboys and the Eagles are so wishy-washy that I don't really trust either. Like, I don't think they're both bad enough that both of them miss out on playoffs. Granted, I think it's a non-zero chance, but I'm sure one of them will still sneak in just on virtue of beating the other team.
I don't know.
The funniest thing to happen would be they split their season series. It'd be the funniest thing to happen.
I think it's possible that both of them get shuttled out, especially if you take into consideration the NFC West.
You know what? Let's end this episode with a fun one. Yeah, let's look at the wild card picture. I don't want to get too crazy. We're just gonna look at the NFC. So yeah, the Commanders are 4-1. So again, it is only week 5. We got the Falcons, Seahawks, Bears, and Bucks and Packers are all 3-2. The Cowboys are 3-2. Eagles are 2-2. The Lions are 3-1. Obviously, there's 2 buys in there. Yeah, I don't know. There's more than enough talent in this conference.
I mean, okay, so it's, let's say the Lions are the head of their division. Still got the Packers. Still got the Vikings.
Vikings.
Still got, again, let's say the 49ers win their division. You still got the Seahawks. You still got the Cardinals. You still got, say there's a miracle, the Rams might be competitive. It's not
Again,
a given.
The Bears are 3-2. So.
It's not a given that either of those teams make it.
Commanders, man. Commanders.
I'll just say quickly for the 2-minute warning, my game of the week. I can't quit gambling on Thursday night football being good. The 49ers and the Seahawks should be a fun time.
I don't know. If the Seahawks are healthy, then yes. But, remains to be seen.
There's a couple other options in this that I ended up settling for that, but there's a couple great games. Like Cardinals Packers could be fun. Commanders Ravens was the obvious one that I figured that you would gun for. Lions Cowboys is definitely going to be a lot of hooting and hollering on that. And
I have a sickos pick, like a truly perverted pick for you.
Oh no.
The Browns are visiting the Eagles. One of these teams has to stop being bad. One of these teams has to stop being bad.
Genuinely, if the Eagles lose that game, Nick Sirianni should be shot into the sun.
Yeah.
Like, even with that good Browns, Deshaun Watson does not convert enough for them to lose that game.
It'll be an interesting one.
And why don't I feel great about that? The fact that I'm still not saying.
That's what I'm saying.
It's possible.
Like, the Eagles should very clearly win this game, but there's a world in which they win this game and it doesn't look good, honestly.
And Jalen Hurts keeps throwing to the sidelines, and Nick Sirianni's like, damn.
Or the Eagles' pass rush doesn't get home the way it should have been doing all season.
I thought I had him on that.
The Browns have a good passing game for once this year.
I thought I had him on that fade route.
Oh, man. Wow. What a time. Yeah, that was it for us. It was a lot of talking, a lot of grading. Man, the NFL is so weird this season.
It's super weird. I'm not looking forward to
2 weeks ago,
9. It's going to be week 9, and it's going to turn on its head. Like, actually, the Cowboys are great.
Yeah, like, did I say that like 2 weeks ago? Or I was like, I can't keep saying this. And I think maybe last week I said, yeah, it's going to keep getting weird. And this week it just hasn't stopped, man. But it's been a fun time. A lot of fun. Yeah, I need to stop talking about football. That was a lot of fun, though.
That was fun.
We're doing this live, basically. I'm like, what a...
trying to find a way to put a pin in it.
And this, yeah. No, we're just gonna end it like this. So, wherever you're listening to this, go have breakfast or lunch or dinner, or stop thinking about football. That's what I'm gonna do, honestly. until Monday Night Football, obviously.
Oh God, who's playing tonight? The Chiefs Saints. Oh shit!
Game,
I gotta think more about football. I'm out of here.
Could be a good game. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks, Caleb. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate you always. Wherever you're listening, always appreciate you guys. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Stop thinking about football.